Hey Bookaholics, so welcome back to another reading vlog. I am currently doing a series of reading vlogs that are me trying out some YA books. Basically, they are YA books that I have been interested in, that I have been told I will like, but I have a complicated relationship with YA nowadays, mostly because I only like trashy YA. That sounds awful, I know. I've talked about this before, but we're gonna delve into it a little bit here. I like trashy YA. I like my YA to be just fun and addictive and easy to get through. I read it where my brain is good, right? So I want something that is predictable, something that's fun, something that's addictive. That's what I'm looking for. So I actually struggle with the good YA more. I know it sounds weird to be kind of dividing it into trashy and good, but you know what I mean. You know, the ones that aren't anywhere near as substantial, haven't really got anything anywhere near as thematically rich as others, but that are just super easy to get through. Like you can get through them practically with your eyes closed. Those are the ones that I want. So last year I tried a couple of YAs that were the more substantial type of YAs. I read Dragonfruit, which was one of them. I read Elasaway, which was another one of them. And the problem that I have is, yes, they are much more substantial, but by comparison to adult fiction, they are not very substantial. So to me, I spend the entire time comparing the substance that they do have to the lack of substance that they have by comparison to adult books that I am reading. I read them and I'm like, I want more from this. I want this to go more in depth. I want this to go darker, deeper, grimmer. I want it to really be a lot more harrowing. I want it to be a more difficult read than it is, because I want those topics to get their due diligence, which is not the point because they are YA. So the point is they're supposed to be almost introductory to YA audiences, that then when you are an adult, you will read the darker, grittier stuff. While with the YA trashy stuff, they're just there for a fun time, right? They're supposed to be really addictive, compulsively readable. You get through them in no time. They're to make you want to read. That is the point. And those are the YAs that I like. So we're going to be going through some YA series that I am excited to get to, that I think I'm going to still enjoy because they're trashy. I know it sounds awful, but let's do this. The first one that I'm going to be going through is today's vlog, and they're going to be spoiler vlogs, so you know, bear that in mind. But I am going to be going through the entirety of the Belladonna trilogy by Adalyn Grace. This is a trilogy that is a gothic, I believe, romance. And we have Belladonna, Foxglove, and Wisteria. Can we talk about how beautiful these covers are? Before we get into anything else, these books are stunning. If I like these, I will get Holly and I will chuck that on the end of the vlog. I don't know yet. It depends on how much I enjoy them. If I have a good time with these, I will get Holly, which is the novella. But this series is following a young woman named Signa Farrow, who is an orphan, and she got orphaned as a baby, and because she comes from a prominent family, she's due a large inheritance. So she gets passed around from different relatives who are all seeking her wealth, and they keep dying. Every guardian that she has keeps dying. A little bit series of unfortunate events-esque, I suspect. And then she is about to become an adult when her guardian dies. So then she gets to go live with this other guardian. This family are already facing tragedy. Before she even gets there, the lady of the house has already died and the daughter is dying of the same illness. And therefore Signa takes it onto herself to try and find out what is happening to this girl and how she can help cure it. Signa also has an interesting relationship with death. She can actually communicate with death, and she can see the ghosts of those who have passed if they linger and remain. So we are getting a little bit of a murder mystery thing going on here as well. This also has been pitched to me as being akin to The Secret Garden, but gothic. The Secret Garden, for all of its problems, and yes, I know it's problematic, I didn't see it as a child, okay? I just didn't see it. I was a kid, but it's a very problematic book. But I loved it as a child. I loved The Secret Garden. It was one of my favourite children's classics as a kid. So I'm very excited to get an A, unproblematic version, B, gothic version, and C, fantasy version of The Secret Garden. Yes, please. So I'm very excited to get into this one. I'm hoping that I will love it. I think I will do 3 check-ins per book. That seems reasonable. So I will do 1 every third of the way across each of the books. So 9 check-ins in total. So yeah, that's where I'm at with these. So hopefully I will go start Belladonna. And once I am 130-ish, maybe, pages in, 140 pages in, I will let you know how I am faring. Hey vlog, I'm checking in because I have now read the first 131 pages of Belladonna, so I thought I would check in. As I've already mentioned, this has been comped to The Secret Garden before, and I am definitely getting that vibe, both in the prose style, the way it's written, this level of melancholy, of mystery almost to it. The atmosphere to it is very much Secret Garden-esque, but also we have a lot of overlap in the things that I'm seeing within the story as well. In The Secret Garden, you have where our protagonist is orphaned, which is the same as can be said for Signa, and then we also have where she has a cousin that is sick and that she wants to do something about it, which also happens in The Secret Garden. We also have where the person that she befriends is someone who works like outdoors. In the case of The Secret Garden, I think he is like the son of maybe the gardener, I think. And in this case, we are following her as she befriends the stable hand. So we are definitely seeing a lot of overlap in terms of the character dynamics in here as well. We have a man who is so deep in mourning and in his loss for his wife, knowing full well that his wife would have done anything to take in this child, and that's the only reason he has done so, but he is not in the mental space to be able to be taking care of her. Now, I don't know if my love of The Secret Garden is what is tipping me off on other things that have yet to happen. So we have discovered that Signa's aunt, the woman who, the lady of this house, has recently passed away, and Signa can see ghosts, and she can also see death. She can converse with death. We are seeing as she's trying to investigate what happened to this lady. And I think it's fascinating to me because what we're seeing from the death of this lady is the impact it's had on everyone else, and how well loved and how well liked she was, and everyone talking and singing her praises. Now, I don't know if I'm suspicious of that particularly, but if The Secret Garden is anything to go by, in The Secret Garden, the governess that takes care of the son in the house, the disabled son, is somewhat the villain of the story. Now, in this case, the governess who is taking care of Blythe, who is the cousin who is sick, we have a lovely governess. She's really, really nice. Now, I don't know if it's because of my love of The Secret Garden that I am suspicious of her, or because she is one of the people who's behaving nicely. Now, at the moment, I can't think of why. So the only two people that are being like overtly nice to our protagonist are her cousin, so the man of the house's son and heir, and the governess. Now, the son is being very nice, but there's like a lot of pushing him to the forefront, which normally is not then the villain, unless they're like super nice, you know, like Hans in Frozen level nice. He's not that. So at the minute, I'm not suspicious of him because he's too far forefront. Then you're normally given a straw man, right? Which I'm assuming in this case is the uncle. The uncle is the one that stands most to benefit from these deaths, because his brother, who owns the business, like the family business that he runs alongside the uncle, he's the one that inherited this business. And when he dies, his son will inherit the business. So the only one that stands really to gain from this is the uncle, because the uncle, obviously with the father losing his mind with grief and not really attending to the business, people are going to start to see him as unfit. And obviously finishing off his daughter is going to be that final brick in the wall that is going to then entomb him, and he is going to then hand over the business to his brother. So that is a little bit too obvious. Now, I'm not saying that the uncle isn't a suspect. I'm just hoping that the book isn't that obvious. The fact it's presented us with this man as a potential villain for this story already makes me think that even if he stands to gain from it, and he might still be villainous, I don't think he is the one that is necessarily the one doing the poisoning. So I do think that our options are either Blythe is doing it to herself for some reason, which I can't quite fathom. Percy, the cousin who could be doing it, I can't figure out why he would be doing it yet. And as I said, he seems to be a little bit too much at the forefront. I don't suspect the father at all, really. So then I'm left with the governess. And I don't know what the governess's intentions would be or why, but she's the person I'm suspecting the most, because I always suspect background characters. Anyone who's presented as villainous or anyone who is presented too overtly, I don't suspect. I only suspect the people who are too nice and the people who are too background. At the minute, those two things converge on the governess, so she's who I'm suspecting at the minute. Obviously, I am 100 and a bit pages in. I am a third of the way into the book at the moment, so I cannot really come up with a definite answer yet. I'm going to go through my suspicions with you as I go. So yeah, I'm enjoying this. I really love Death. Death is proper giving me Shadow Daddy vibes, like the way he refers to her as Little Bird. Anytime right, that you have this guy who is presented as being really shadow daddy-ish, and then he has a nickname for her, like Blake in The Wolf King, where his nickname is Little Rabbit for her, or like Rhysand, where he calls her darling. Any of the times that these shadow daddies come up with a nickname, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, you can have my song. That seems fine. That seems a reasonable exchange. But yeah, Death at the minute being presented as very hot. Now, this is presented as YA. Now, when it comes to like the tone and the pacing and stuff, I can kind of, I guess, understand. But I don't know why this isn't new adult. I know that we don't like new adult as a term because it's got associated with smut because it's Sarah J. Maas. I like the idea of the term new adult. I am a huge advocate for new adult because not necessarily just because of the kinky stuff and the smut stuff, which I do think is necessary. There's way too much kinky stuff in YA. And I'm talking kinky stuff. I'm not talking sex. I don't think that teens should be sheltered from sex. But kinky stuff, when you're too young to understand boundaries and consent to the levels that you should for kinks, and they're presented kind of badly a lot of the time. You know, it's a lot of dominance and control, but we're not talking safe words, we're not talking boundaries, like, no. So I think that new adult definitely needs to have a space. But also in this case, like, our protagonist is about to turn 20. Now, I don't know what 12-year-olds need to be reading a 20-year-old's perspective, you know? Could just be me. This, to me, at the moment, I would definitely put more in new adult than I would young adult. And given that the point of these vlog projects is to see if I still like YA, it's not going so well because I'm liking this, but I wouldn't consider this YA. So yeah, I'm liking it. I'm liking Death. I wish we had more of Death on page. I don't know if we are presenting Death as a love interest or if we are presenting Silas, the groomsman, as a love interest at the moment. Maybe both. I don't know. I mean, I could suspect Silas. He is the person that we are seemingly trusting the most, which again, as I said, is normally one of the cues for it to be the villain. Rachel said this is predictable though, and I'm wondering how predictable we're talking. Are we talking like it's the uncle, it's been obvious from the start, or is it like the governess or Silas who are the good guys? I don't know what levels, because both of those are predictable to me at the moment, at least from the 100 pages that I've read, where we've only just really started an investigation. So if it's any of those three, then yes, this book is obscenely predictable. So we shall see. But I'm looking forward to finding out more about Death and her connection to Death. I loved the bit where we went into the garden and her interactions with Lillian, who is the woman who is deceased, like the ghost of the woman who's deceased, because she lost her tongue to her illness, so she can't actually talk, but she can kind of communicate with our protagonist. And yeah, I don't know. I am looking forward to finding out more about these powers that she has as well. So yeah, I'm gonna stop rambling now. I'm gonna go continue reading at some point, and then I will check back in once I am another third of the way through, and we'll see how I'm getting on and if any of my predictions are coming to the forefront. Hey vlog, I'm checking in again because I have now read another third of Belladonna, and I am now on chapter 30, so page 262. I did do a quick check-in last night at like the specific point in which I discovered something. I'll leave it here, but like it's a very quick check-in. Not a proper full-on update, but I just needed to nip in to document the thought before I actually get to a possible reveal. I just read the bit with her and the girls at this tea that she's been having, and Death comes and is like criticizing her because she didn't take a second scone, and then Silas has just met up with her and been like, it took you so long, did you decide to stop for scones? So I'm gonna assume, because this book is not discreet, that Silas is Death, that they're the same person. I don't know why scones are the reason that I think he is Death, but Silas is Death. I'm putting my money on that. So yeah, I think it's not been confirmed yet, but we had another instance later on where her and Silas were hanging out, and she talked about how she was going to do some sleuthing, and then later on Death is like, in the meantime I'll do some sleuthing. Like, he used her exact words. I'm convinced at this point. The fact there were two instances and I picked up on it, I was like, okay, that's not subtle, right? Am I reading too much into this? Is this author just like reusing words, or I'm reading too much into it? Or it's, yeah, right? It's gotta be. It's gotta be that Silas is Death. No one else has interacted with Silas. I have not seen Silas interact with another person. When I first noticed that, before I did that, like when I was thinking about the first check-in, later on when I read like a couple of extra chapters and Silas was in it again, and I realized he's not talked to another person. He's talking about talking to other people, but we've not seen him interact with another person. I thought he was dead. I thought that he was going to be a dead person. And then the scones thing happened and it clicked and I was like, he's death. Of course he's death. Duh. So now I feel stupid. I'm gonna feel even more stupid if I'm wrong. Because it's like, this is so obvious, and then it's going to be something else, maybe. But right now, that's where I'm at with this, that Silas is death. I am really liking it. I love death. I love death so much. Listen, okay, toxic shadow daddies are just, they're my thing. I like non-toxic shadow daddies as well. Shout out to Tales of a Monstrous Heart, non-toxic shadow daddy. I love shadow daddies, okay? Resand ruined me like it ruined the rest of y'all. I'm a basic bitch like everyone else, okay? So, yeah. I'm here. I'm loving death. It's not a lie. Now, listen. Is this book reinventing the wheel? No. Is this book doing anything new? No. Is this book predictable as fuck? Yes. Am I having a good time anyway? Yeah, I am. I read those 100 pages and I was like, should I do an update at night? Even though I've sworn off doing like proper full-on updates at night because lighting sucks, right? And I was like, should I do an update at night just so I can keep reading? I didn't because it was late and I have other books to read. And then I read like another chapter of the book I was reading. I was like, okay, fine, bedtime. But I'm having a good time. Now, listen, my list of suspects was kind of right? Because we've got the governess, we've got Marjorie sort of conspiring with Byron, the uncle, because our protagonist, Signa, followed them to the club that they run, that the family run, and they were kind of like discussing things. And then we want to know why Elijah, why the patriarch of this family is wanting to run the business into the ground, and we're wanting to know why he wants to deny it his son, why he forbids his son from going there, etc. We've also had it where Signa has saved Blythe, at least for now. She has managed to like purge the Belladonna from her body, so there's that at least. I don't know, but the interactions with death, like the times that she's just like, okay, I'm gonna go learn how to be a Reaper, basically, are the bits that I'm living for. Also, her interactions with Silas. And the thing is as well, is that now that I think of death as Silas, I think of those interactions as the same thing, and I'm going to be devastated if he's not. Because then, in my head, Signa's, like, because I'm thinking of this as a romantasy, because why wouldn't I? The way it's set up is clearly going to be. I don't know if I'm also projecting that I want death to be Silas, because I don't want her to choose between death and Silas, because they both bring out different sides to her, almost. And I don't know. I'm excited for that. I am excited to read the last third. I'm hoping that I will love it as much as I anticipate, because I'm hoping that the romance in here will really kick into gear. I don't know. The thing is, though, is if the romance really kicks into gear in this one, what are the next two books going to be about, or should I be concerned? You know, like that's also a thing. So I don't know. I'm hoping that this one kind of wraps up a lot of things, and then that the next book is still just following Signa, but with like a new mystery almost instead. That would be preferable for me. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm gonna go do that now. I literally waited so I could do this update so then I could go jump in and continue. So for now, that's all my thoughts. Mostly my thoughts are just death. But I will check back in when I finish the book and see if any of my theories are true, see if anything gets revealed. I will let you know. I'm having a good time. Hey vlog, I'm checking in again because I have now finished Belladonna. I had a much better time with this than I anticipated. Again, I knew this was going to be predictable. I think I knew what I signed up for when I signed up for this book. And I think that's what makes all the difference. I loved elements of this. And then there were things that I enjoyed, even though they were predictable, and felt kind of almost nostalgic, even though I haven't read this book before. And then there were other elements that were just predictable in neither a good way nor a bad way. I don't have any complaints about this book. Getting into the actual spoilery part. God damn it. Amongst my first suspects from back when I first started reading this was Percy. And I was like, but he's too at the forefront. I don't think the authors normally put someone that much at the forefront. Even as a likable character, they don't normally put someone that much at the forefront. It can't be that predictable. But also Byron's too predictable, and that's why I landed on Marjorie. And then Marjorie kind of turned out to like be the main suspect for a while, and I was like, oh, actually maybe I'm wrong then. Maybe I have got this wrong, because like there was too many pages left almost for that to be the reveal. So I was like, oh shit, maybe I've got it wrong. You know, but Byron's still in play. Maybe it's going to go that level of predictable, and I just didn't give Percy another thought because I thought he's too much at the forefront, you know? Oh god, I was so close, but I was right. I was right about Silas and death. And the two clues that I had are literally what made me certain. Like, not even like after that point, anytime that she was interacting with Silas, anytime she was interacting with death, I was treating it like the same person, just that she didn't know yet. So the fact that I got there from those two clues, from the words scone and sleuthing, I got that he was death. I am so proud of myself for that. Now, again, it's predictable. There's nothing unpredictable about this, but I love me a shadow daddy. I love death. The fact that they don't end up together in like the typical sense that they're gonna try and steal moments together instead of actually being able to be together until she's dead is awesome. Like I love that it took that twist and it wasn't just like everything's wrapped up with a nice neat bow, and him being like, I want you to live your life, and that we've got eternity. You know, you go live your life, this life that I have been fighting for you to have a good life for, go live it, and then we've got all eternity. You're worth the wait. And that was just stunning. And then the very ending where the Duke, who was really creepy, dies, and now we've got Fate, who I believe Death has said he knows. I don't know in what capacity. I don't know if they're enemies or anything yet, but we've got Fate. Fate appeared at the very end of this book, so I think the next one is going to center on Fate. I had a fantastic time with so many elements of this. Again, with books like this, it means I get to switch my brain off for a while. It means that I get to just sit back and go, okay, that's what's happening here, and I don't need to think about it. I don't need to overthink it, because if I overthink it, I either guess the book or I overthink it so much that I think the book is going to be more complicated than it is, like what happened with Percy, right? So I get to relax when reading these books. These are genuinely books that I read for relaxing. I love the romance that we built up between both Silas and Death and their connection to Signa. I know they're the same person, the way that he's presented, and he's just so cute. He's like proper shadow daddy of like, he is flipping death, right? So like there's this menacing, terrifying element to him, and yet he's softy. And he's one of those iterations of death that I love. I love when we see the depictions of death and it is someone who is benevolent to those who deserve it, someone who has just come to take a soul away. Right? Someone who is just here to guide someone, not necessarily the cause, you know? And I like that element of death, seeing the different angles at which people greet death or how they'll cling to life and all of that. I really loved that. I did like seeing the relationship between Elijah and Blythe, also kind of phoenix from the ashes of their family. Lillian being able to finally pass on. Marjorie deciding that she needs to go make a different life for herself where she's not tethered to other people. All in all of that was great. The reveal of Percy being Marjorie's son actually did catch me by surprise. Not even one of those where when I was reading it, I was like, oh, I saw that coming a mile away. I thought it would be Blythe. I thought if there was any kind of relations, it would be Blythe. And then afterwards, it wasn't until we find out that Marjorie had slept with Elijah before he married Lillian that I thought that it might be Percy. So it was very, very close to the reveal. So I don't think I can get that as guessing it, because by that point the book is kind of spoon feeding you that, right? Like the book is very much telling you without telling you that information. So I definitely wouldn't consider that as something that I predicted. And again, even once I realized Marjorie and Elijah had relations, I assumed that it was an infidelity and therefore assumed that it would be Blythe. Hence why someone's trying to kill Blythe, because Lillian and Blythe are the ones that are dead, you know? I enjoyed it nonetheless. I think the conversations that we're having here as well surrounding the way that we need to treat life, right? You have these men who are obsessed with work and prestige, and money are everything that they care about, and it's not until they've lost something that they truly become more appreciative of what they have outside of the money and the wealth and the status. So I do like that conversation, and I like the way that Elijah goes about it, and that is a huge part of his guilt, that it's not just grief, that it is guilt in there, and that is why he is reacting so strongly about what's happening to Blythe, obviously as any father would, but also the extra layers to it, and his resentment towards the club and all of that. So many things going on in here that I did really appreciate. The fact that at the end that frees up Byron to potentially go have a family of his own. He's actually interested in courting women now because he now is more free to do so because he's getting money from the club, but not to the point where the club becomes his entire life. I liked all of that. I really appreciated that. I'm glad that I read this. So is this a new favorite? This is the best book I've ever read? No, of course not. Did I have a really good time reading it? And was it a fun, easy time with a fabulous shadow daddy and some gothic vibes? Hell yeah. And that's really all I wanted from it, and it fulfilled that. That does mean that now I'm going to move on to book 2. Now, book 2 is actually divided into parts from what I've seen. I believe it's in 3 parts. So I will do a check-in per part. So every time I get to the end of one of the parts, I will check in. So this will be a less even distribution because part 1 is like 200 pages, part 2 is like 150 pages, and part 3 is like 100 pages. So it's not going to be an even distribution of check-ins. So it's possible the first check-in will be longer because there's more pages to it, or maybe the second one because even though there's less pages, more has happened. I don't know yet, but I'm going to do it by part because I'm assuming that the story is split into parts for a reason, and I will be able to contextualize my thoughts based on that. So that's what we're going to be doing with Foxglove. This one is, I believe, following Signa and Blythe. I believe both get POVs in this one, which I'm very excited to get Blythe's POV because I really liked her as a character. This one is investigating the murder of the Duke that happened at the end of Belladonna, and we also have Fate, who I think is annoyed at Signa's meddling in book 1 with Fate and with death and all of that. So I'm excited to see how that's going to pan out. I am already somewhat wondering, since we've got Signa paired off with Death, and now we've got Blythe's perspective, if that means that there's a romance between Blythe and Fate. Either that or Fate's like the villain and Blythe is going to stay single. I've seen one scene, like I think Fate has said one sentence so far at the end of Belladonna, so I don't know. But Blythe was very much like she didn't want to be part of society. She didn't want to be married off the same way all these other girls getting married off. She doesn't want a season. So I am wondering if it was specifically to lean in towards the fact that she's going to end up in a relationship with Fate. So then we've got like the 2 cousins and the 2 omnipresent beings. I'm excited to dive in, so that's exactly what I'm going to go do. So once I get to the end of part 1, I will come and check in and give you my thoughts. I'm checking in because I have now read part 1 of Foxglove, which actually takes me to past the halfway point of the book. So maybe I should have checked in sooner, but it's too late for that now. So here we are. We're going to check in, and this is going to be probably one of the longer check-ins, but I am having such a good time with this. I am actually annoyed at how much I am liking these because it's just making me feel all like young again. I'm liking it, but it's also ruining other reading for me at the moment. So yeah, like I am, like it's not a new favorite, but I'm just really addicted and really invested. I am excited to continue. So I need to do this check-in so that I can continue on with the book. So we have had where basically right after what happens in book 1, where the Duke is killed, then Elijah is accused by Fate and Elijah has been arrested. And then we are now going into a new investigation where we're trying to find out who actually killed the Duke so we can free Elijah. And we are also seeing what it is that Fate wants from Death and Signa. Fate believes that Signa is life, the embodiment of life, the same way that we've got Death and Fate. And life was previously Fate's lover. So Fate was in love with life, and then life knew that it was her time to come to an end, and she had pleaded with Death for him to take her, but he cared for her like a sister, and Fate begged him not to take her, so he held on until eventually he could not hold on anymore. And then when her death came, it brought about the Black Death. So it was really selfish of Death to have not let her die, but he was doing it for his brother. But however, Fate only sees it as he took away life, and now Fate is sad. So Fate hates Death, and he believes that Signa is life, and therefore wants to woo Signa, wants to get Signa to marry him instead. And so we are following this kind of weird love triangle, but it's not really a love triangle because Signa's not actually interested in Fate at all, and he just keeps playing these games and using her connection with Death. So he keeps getting in the way where she can't communicate with Death, she can't see him, can't touch him, can't feel him anymore, and she is obviously very upset that she can't see the man that she loves. On the flip side of that, Blythe has now found out about Signa Cigna's killing Percy, but doesn't know why. So she just knows that Cigna is behind Percy's death. So she has sent Cigna away. So Cigna is now going to go to Foxglove, which is her family home. She is now trying to find out how to save her father on her own. So that's where we're at so far. And we also have it where the current list of suspects for who murdered the Duke are Byron again, which is getting a bit annoying now that it keeps coming back to Byron. Everyone keeps suspecting him. We are also suspecting Everett, who is the son of the Duke. And we also think that something is going on between Everett and Charlotte, and also between Byron and Eliza. So we know that things are happening, but we don't know exactly what yet. I have my suspicions. I think that Byron is maybe using Eliza to try and find Percy, because they're looking for Percy, because Byron doesn't know Percy's dead. So Byron, I think, is maybe trying to use Eliza to find Percy, or something to do with Percy. And I think that Charlotte is just genuinely interested in Everett, and I think that they're trying to make it suspicious for no real reason, to kind of amp it up. However, that leaves me with no idea who actually killed the Duke. I'm assuming, like, it could be fate. It could just be that fate killed the Duke so that he can play all of these pieces. But I think that he's more of like, he plays the pieces, he doesn't actually do the thing. So I don't know who is the actual murderer. Yeah, I haven't come to any conclusions about that at all yet. Not a foggiest. But I am enjoying the tension. I love Death. Death is literally one of my favorite love interests that I've read in a while. Him and Blake have literally overcome my soul this year. So it turns out the shadow daddies and me, it's just a thing. I love me a shadow daddy. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what is going to happen there. At the moment, maybe my suspicion that Blythe and Fate are going to end up a thing is maybe wrong. But also Blythe doesn't have a love interest, and this is a romance series, and I just don't believe that in the third book we're going to have no development in a romance. And I'm really hoping that this book is not going to then drag into the third book with like keeping Death and Cigna apart or something. I'm not vibing with that either. I still hold out hope. I don't really know how that's going to come about though, with Fate being so obsessed with Cigna. I don't know if he's just going to remain the bad guy and something's going to change in the third one, but I'm holding out hope there'll be Blythe and Fate, because I do really like Fate. Even though he's the villain and I want to throttle him most of the book because he's an asshole, his prologue where it's talking about the way he sees art and the way he feels about music, it almost felt like synesthesia on page, the way it was describing the emotions that are evoked from art and the way we perceive art. And then the discussions that Blythe and Fate had about art briefly was really cool as well. So I am really excited to continue and see where this romance is going to go. And again, I've got less than half the book to go, so hopefully by the time we've got to the end of part 2, I'll have a little bit more to say. I also don't really know how Blythe and Cigna are going to reconcile. Obviously, I assume Death is probably going to be the one that tells Blythe what happened with Percy. I don't think Cigna would. Cigna's weirdly stubborn and doesn't think that Blythe has the right to information, which is really annoying. So I think Death will potentially be the one that tells, because it won't be Fate, because it's not in Fate's best interest to make Death look good, right? So I think it will be Death that will let Blythe know what Cigna actually did, and that will help them reconcile. I don't know. I'm excited to continue on and see what Foxglove is like. I'm really excited to see what the house is like, because obviously we get a brief glimpse of it in the prologue of the first book where we see all of Cigna's family die. But I don't know. I'm excited to see what she'll do with making the house her own home, and I think it's going to really add to those gothic vibes that I'm really loving from this book. So yeah, I will go and continue, and once I get to the end of part 2, I will check back in and I can gush a little bit more and get a little bit more excited. And yeah, hopefully this lives up to my expectations and that I can still keep swooning over Death. The desperation in me for her to be able to see Death, the way I feel so angry when they're forcibly separated, I need to keep reading. Hey vlog, I am here to check in because I have now finished part 2 of Foxglove, and I wanted to check in even though it's Sunday morning and I really could be doing other things just because I would like to finish this book. I have thoughts actually on part 2, because this actually could have very easily been an incredibly boring part of the book. That's going to sound weird given that I am chomping at the bit to get to the next bit. In this part, basically, we have had where Blythe is kind of communicating with inner circle of people that she knows to see if she can find anything about who potentially actually killed the Duke. to try and save her father, including looking into other people's motivations. Then we're also seeing the way that she is beginning to interact with Fate. So Fate has actually revealed to Blythe who he is, who Cigna is, and who he thinks Cigna is, and who Death is. And then we're also seeing him trying to broker a deal with Blythe. If she gets Cigna to voluntarily marry him, he will save her father. So he is now entering into the realm of coercion. On the flip side of that, we have Cigna, who has obviously been forced to leave Thorngrove and is now gone to Foxglove, which is where she's from. And Foxglove is haunted, so she is seeing a lot of ghosts. I don't know if it means that we're going to see what actually happened to Cigna's parents, because all we know is that they were poisoned. Like, there was a ball, and then everyone died, and they were all poisoned. And we don't know why. Her godmother is one of the ghosts there who is befriending her. And then we are also seeing the fact that she cannot communicate with Death. So it would be very easy for this part to have been boring. It's not very long. I guess that's why part 1 was so much longer than part 2. But it's kind of the calm before the storm, I suspect. It's interesting because on the one hand, 1, it could be boring just because we're just watching Blythe talk to people, let's be honest. 2, it could be boring because we're just watching Cigna get used to her new home and get to know some ghosts. And 3, and most importantly, this is a romance at the end of the day. And most of us are reading these books for the romance. Most of us are not here for anything other than the romance, right? Cigna and Death are mostly kept apart. So it would be really easy for this to become one of those prolonged reasons to keep them apart, and we're not getting to see the romance. But because we're watching Cigna come into her own, we're watching her discover things and interact with these ghosts, and we're watching her be her, it was fine, especially because it didn't go on for too long. So even though she's separated from Death, we're getting to see her not need Death, to be a separate entity to Death, that they are not only a couple, that she is also a person. And I think it was handled in a really good way. So I am glad that this part happened because we get to see that development. Blythe is being infuriating, but because we have information she doesn't, which also by proxy makes Cigna infuriating, because if Blythe had all of the information, she would not be so infuriating. She would not be making deals with Fate. So Cigna is just as much to blame for this as Blythe is. She's just not to blame in the way that she thinks she's to blame. So that's been curious as well. So I'm excited to see how this concludes. I don't know how this is going to pan out and how they're going to find like a loophole around what Fate has planned, but I think it's ultimately going to come down to Blythe. So I'm very curious to see how I'm going to fare with this last part before we get into the last book. But I get a feeling that the last book is going to be centering on Blythe and Fate, because obviously we've had a book and a half of Cigna and Death, and I don't, even though I'm really liking these books and I'm having a great time with them, I don't think I can get through another entire book of Death and Cigna being like forced apart. I just don't think that would work for me. So I'm hoping more than anything that we're going to get Fate and Blythe, or at least Blythe be the kind of more prevalent character in the 3rd book. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to go now pick up the last part and then check in. So these 2 check-ins might look very similar because they are potentially going to be read back to back, and I think this last part is less than 100 pages. Yes, it's 90 pages. So I don't think this will take me very long. I've got a little while. I'm going to go read it and I'll check back in very soon. All right, vlog, as I said, in pretty much exactly the same position as I was in earlier, and I have finished Foxglove. Wow, so much happened in the smallest part of this book. Holy guacamole. So we did have it where Blythe and Aris tried to convince Cigna to marry Aris in exchange for freeing Elijah. However, the way it was phrased meant that eventually when Blythe came to her senses and she found out why Cigna was doing what she was doing, why she killed Percy, and therefore also the fact that Cigna has consistently been putting herself in harm's way and has consistently been doing everything she can for Blythe's family, Blythe began to regret her involvement and decided to take Cigna's place, and now Blythe is married to Aris against both of their will, basically, just because it was the only way that she could free Cigna. So now we have Blythe and Aris, who are married to each other. Also, Eliza is pregnant with Percy's baby, which is probably why Byron and her have been working together, I suppose, to try and hide her pregnancy, and I think also Byron's going to probably marry Eliza. We also see how at the end of the book, the way that Byron is behaving towards Eliza makes us think that even though Eliza is the one that confessed to having poisoned her uncle, but not because she deliberately tried to poison her uncle, she was actually trying to poison the man her uncle was trying to marry her off to because she was repulsed by him. There is the belief that it's entirely possible that it was actually Byron that did it because he wouldn't have allowed such a fate to befall. Eliza. So we're probably going to see more of that develop in Wisteria. But yeah, so far, excellent installment. Both of the books that I've read from this series so far have been 4 stars, and I stand by that. And also just that like last moment between Death and Signa where you think that they are going to be parted, and then I assumed for a second there that the 3rd book was literally going to be about Death and Signa trying to find a way out of this arrangement with Fate. That's not the case. And like at the end as well, like in the epilogue where you see that they, not the epilogue, the last chapter where you see that they are like going to try and sort out Foxglove, because part of the deal was that now Signa can see and touch Death with no risks, like they can be together properly. So he's going to make himself a home at Foxglove, which is going to be adorable. And then the prologue is basically the wedding between Everett and Charlotte, and we also see where Blythe is now married to Aris, and it's going to be confrontational for a little while. So I'm very excited to see how it's going to go. Again, I really hope that in Wisteria our main character is going to be Blythe. I assume that this is going to detail the relationship between Blythe and Fate, and I think that this one is also going to centre around the fact that Blythe is going to discover that she is life instead of Signa. That the reason that Signa has been able to keep bringing people back to life has nothing to do with Signa. The person that is always there is Blythe, and therefore Blythe is actually life and Signa is in fact a Reaper. And it's likely that Blythe has become life because she has been revived so many times. So I am very excited to see how this one's going to go. This one is another one that's also in 3 parts. So this is another one which will have 3 final check-ins, and then that will be the end of the series, and I'll give my overview of the series and also like a brief insight into at least how this makes me feel about YA. So we will go do that, and yeah, I will check back in once I've read part 1. I don't know how evenly distributed this book is. So part 1 is quite short, and then I think part 2 seems to be the longer part, and then part 3 is also quite short. So this one's distributed differently to the previous one. But yeah, I'll do 1 check-in per part and we'll see how I fare with it. But I'm very excited to see this relationship, this, I'm assuming, a kind of enemies to lovers vibe that we'll have going between Aris and Blythe. So let's get to it. I am on such a roll today. That's what Sundays are for, though, right? So now I'm on page 124, which puts me at part 2 of Wisteria. So I thought I would check in. I am really liking this. We haven't actually had Signa's perspective at all. So Signa, we've only seen Signa and Death once. We've basically only seen them when Blythe has briefly gone to visit their house because she's, you know, having a crap time in Wisteria with Aris. So we are seeing it from the perspective of Blythe entirely. The way that she and Aris are trying to cope with each other. He wants to go travel the world. He is not a very stationary person. He's someone that moves around a lot. Obviously, Blythe doesn't want to keep leaving her father. She has only just at the end of this agreed to the condition that if they put up a farce and make it seem as though she is actually the princess of this place that she and Aris are purportedly the prince and princess of, then she will travel with him so long as she can just be teleported back to her father whenever she pleases. I'm really liking the way that this story is being told so far, because we have this conflict of minds, these two people who are very much antagonizing each other, but not in a way that's insufferable. There are two people who are just frustrated with their situation and are taking it out on each other, but in an interesting way, and I'm really appreciating that. So far so good. I am enjoying myself. Really do like Blythe as a character, and I do find her very interesting. I do find Aris, even in the prologue where we see Aris, it's actually Life's perspective that we get in the prologue, which obviously we know now is Blythe. We get Life's perspective, and I don't actually like Aris even in that perspective when he is happy, because his happiness comes at the expense of his wife's happiness. He is not adhering to her requests just because his happiness would be infringed upon, and he's getting in the way of her making decisions and choices for herself, and I found that fascinating. I am excited to continue on. In part 2, we are going to have it, yes, where Aris is going to have to use all of his magic to try and convince Elijah that the country / city that he is from is real, and Signa is currently looking into what happened to her parents, who murdered her parents. So I'm very excited for both of those perspectives to unfurl. Excited to read the next part. As I said, it is the longest part part of the 3. So hopefully it'll be the one where a lot of the development happens, and then we'll just get like the falling action and the like conclusions in the 3rd part. I don't want there to be a 3rd act breakup, but this one I think is going to have to follow a more traditional romance standalone setup, what with it being kind of a standalone. Obviously we've had all the build up, but the interactions between Aris and Blythe are basically exclusively in this book, really, apart from the couple of bits where Aris was trying to get Signet in the previous book. So this is the only one that's going to have a chance to develop their relationship, which means that there is, I think, a heightened chance of there being a 3rd act breakup. But yeah, I'm excited to see how I'm assuming we're going to have the romance develop, probably a 3rd act breakup at the end of part 2, and then the resolution to that and the resolution to the plot at the end of part 3. I am excited to continue. I'm hoping that Holly comes out on paperback this year so that I can get to that. So who knows how long this vlog is going to go, because this is January at the moment, but I'll have to wait for the paperback of Holly before I finish this vlog if it comes out this year. So who knows when this vlog will be out. But yeah, so far so good. I'm going to stop rambling and I'm going to go continue. Good morning, vlog. I have now finished part 2 of Wisteria, so I thought I would check in and give you a quick update. I really liked this part. It was definitely the part where our 2 characters kind of come together and get to know each other. I loved the city that was created in here. Aris made basically for Blythe. Like, he basically made it because she needed to convince her father this place was real so he wouldn't worry about her. And then she gets to see how Aris goes along with this, and it is draining him because he is having to use so much magic that she didn't think it would be a thing that would cause him problems, that he would agree to something that would hurt him. So it begins to kind of make her soften to him a little bit, and I really appreciated that. I think that it was done in a way that didn't romanticize making yourself uncomfortable for the person that you love, but at the same time it just showed that when you really care about someone, those kind of commitments don't feel as difficult, I suppose. So I really appreciated that, and I really did like the interactions that we have. We also have discussions around a little bit more freedom of sexuality than you would, I suppose, expect from a book that is set during the, I'm assuming, Victorian-ish era. It's definitely talking, in the case of Blythe, about how she knows that they're never going to be in love with each other, but that she still wants to experience sex. She still wants to have relations. She still wants intimacy. And if he's not going to give it to her, is she permitted to find other partners and stuff like that? So that was an important conversation as well. It also establishes that I believe both of them are bisexual, which is fabulous. We have it where Blythe has had relations with both men and women, obviously not to the point of having sex, but still partaking in a form of intimacy with both sexes. And then also Aris very much saying that, like, he's never been partial to one or the other, that he just finds partners based on how attracted he is to them. So yeah, we've established that they're both bisexual, which was awesome, and I felt the need to mention, even though it's not a huge part. I love when books casually have queer representation, especially because these books are never listed as queer books, they're never mentioned as being queer books, and yet we have, I guess because it's a heterosexual relationship, that then it never felt the need to address the fact that we've got bisexual representation here, which is awesome. I really do like the way that their romance blossomed, and we have had now where Blythe has found out that she is Life. She's also communicated with her past incarnation, with Mila, who was Life when she was first married to Aris. So we've also had her interacting with her, and we've also been introduced to Chaos. Chaos is the one who, Chaos actually thinks that Blythe is Signa. She thinks that she is Signa's mother's daughter, and that's why she's supposedly let Blythe live for now. But we have it where Chaos is threatening to create a much larger issue if balance is not restored. And that is because Blythe has come back to life and defied death when she wasn't supposed to. So we get to see how that unfolds and what that exactly means and how they can fix it. So I'm very excited to see how this is going to go. And I'm hoping that it will help Aris maybe this time realize that there are genuine dire consequences to what he asked of death the first time, and that all of his actions therefore have been abhorrent, and hopefully it will help him, because he's definitely falling in love with Blythe now. If he does fall in love with Blythe, what he is willing to sacrifice, I suppose, to make it right, to atone for what he did. I don't know, I'm liking where this is going, and I'm hoping that we'll actually have a decent discussion once the book is done. So I'm going to go sit here and read for a bit, and then I'll check back in a little bit once I have finished part 3. So it turns out I can check in substantially sooner than I thought I could, because there's a part 4. I thought this was only divided into 3 parts. There's a part 4. So this part was only 60 pages, 60 odd pages. I thought I'd check in because we have had where Blythe is deteriorating and Aris is very concerned, and they're very clearly in love with each other at this point. And I like that they fell in love with each other for each other. Like, he fell in love with Blythe, not because she's Life, but because of who she is. Now, obviously, that connection back to Life, I guess, makes him feel more comfortable that he is not betraying his wife, because he knew that she would come back. And I think that one of the reasons he was pushing against Blythe is that he was worried that, you know, if Mila came back, then he would be torn. And now they are somewhat connected. They are not exactly the same person, but they are both Life, I think, has put him at ease in that sense. So he is very, very much now just okay with the fact that he is in love with Blythe. And I really liked that. And then we also are seeing the way that he is being protective of Elijah now that he sees Elijah as family, the way that he is opening up to both Death and Signa, and allowing them to help where possible. We've seen the way they've interacted with Chaos, and Chaos had in the previous part, I forgot to mention, I think, that she was the cause of the death that happened at Foxglove to all of Signa's family. And we've also been looking into the why Chaos kind of killed off all of Signa's family. So yeah, that was interesting. And it essentially comes down to the fact that Rima, Signa's mum, brought her best friend Amity back from death, and therefore upset the balance, and that's what caused chaos. And then Chaos went and killed off everyone at this ball. So yeah, I am excited to see how they're going to save Blythe, or if they're just not going to. Are they going to kill Blythe off at the end of this book? I mean, I kind of spoiled myself because I'm fairly certain that Blythe is in Holly, I think, but now I'm questioning it, because obviously when I looked up if Holly was a novel or a novella, the only names that really meant much to me in terms of like, I want to know that they're there, was Signa and Death. So now I don't know. Now I'm questioning things, because Aris didn't mean anything to me because I didn't know who he was at the time. But yeah, we also have it where Aris knows that there is a price to be paid. So I'm now wondering if he's going to sacrifice himself this time, because the idea is that because Life is one of these entities, she's not just a person, you can't trade a life for a life. But also, I don't know why she's dying. Like, I don't know what exactly has changed, like how she's offset the balance, aside from like bringing a horse back, which seems a bit much. So I'm very curious to see how this last part is going to pan out, and what we're going to do. So yeah, we'll see how that last part works out. We're going to find out, I assume, why Blythe is dying. We're going to find out how we're going to fix this, if at all. Because again, Holly, I don't think is part of the main series. I think it's a standalone. So I don't think that we're going to have to wait for things to wrap up in Holly. So we'll see. I'm excited to see how this fares. One last part to go. Again, I have next to nothing left. I'm on page 365, and the book in total has 419 pages. So I'll literally just leave this set up here, go read this, come back, and we'll chat. And I'm done. I'm done with Wisteria. So much happened in that like less than 100 pages at the end. What was it? 50, 60 pages at the end here? So much happened in this book. Oh my god. We have where the reason that Blythe is dying is because Percy is back from the dead. And obviously the reason that Blythe had a life is because Death took Percy's life and gave it to Blythe, because Percy was the one that had been killing Blythe. So that's the reason that she's dying, is that Percy's back from the dead. And therefore she doesn't have that life force anymore. And instead of messing again and taking an innocent person's life to give it to her, she decided that she was going to die. However, Aris then steps in and says, no, I need to atone for what I did in the past lifetime. I can't watch you die again, but that doesn't mean that I can hurt life the way that I have. So I'm going to die. And because he will come back, because he is fate, he is eternal. So he dies instead. And then she realizes that she doesn't know how long it will be until he can come back. Because obviously Aris waited for hundreds of years for Blythe to come. And then there's this worry of like, okay, but will he come back as a different person? Will we not recognize him? Will I not know him? Will he not know me? But then they kind of summarize that the reason that Life didn't remember who she was and took so long for her to return is because of the way in which she died. The fact that they prevented her from dying the way she should have, the fact that she died in such a horrible way, the fact that so many others died alongside her because of this, is the reason that one, she forgot who she was, and two, she did not return completely as herself. So the idea is that it's possible that because Aris has gone willingly, and when it was a right time to do so, he would be back sooner, but we don't know how long it will be. So by the end of it, we have it where obviously none of the other three are aging now. Like, they've all kind of stuck to just being the age that they are. You have Silas and Signa and Blythe, who are not aging, but everyone else is. So where Elijah is now an old man, there's kind of rumors around Blythe that she's kind of more like a phantom than anything else, and that her hair has turned completely white, and that she's just sort of seen about occasionally and having never aged, and people think that maybe she's more like a ghost than anything else. She lives in Wisteria, and she's put all of these like brambles and things around her house to keep people out so that they leave her alone, because obviously people are curious about this ghost woman. And then she kind of has this system that like she knows if someone's trying to break in, and then at the end we see that someone is trying to break in, and then Aris comes to the door covered in scratches from the brambles and stuff, and then they're reunited. And it was just a lovely way to end it. Signa does get told about Ruma's death and how it occurred, and that it was all for Amity. So she's got that closure as well. So Silas and Signa are living at Foxglove together. And then, yeah, we have Blythe living in Wisteria and Aris returning to her. And yes, Elijah is an old man now. She's got to watch her father grow old, which is lovely. It was a nice ending, because obviously you know that Elijah's not going to last much longer. I don't even know if Elijah will be around for Holly, because I don't know when Holly is set, because now all of the characters are immortal. I don't know how old or young everyone's going to be. I don't know if Byron will be in it, or if any of the younger girls that like grew up with them, they'll all be at the very least middle-aged women now. There was something bittersweet about just, there's a privilege in watching the people around you grow old and age. And I guess one of the luxuries, but also one of the worst aspects of immortality is that you watch everyone else around you grow old and you don't, but at the same time it's a privilege to see that life. So much about this story, even though it's gothic and it's dark and it's a lot about death and murder, there is so much about just appreciating life, about living life. You have Blythe, who is desperate to live life because she thought she was going to die. There's so many conversations in this book about Blythe just saying how she thought she would never leave that room. She hates being in her room in Thorn Grove now, because that room is death to her, because that's where she thought she was going to die. She thought she was going to stare at that ceiling and die. Therefore, when she doesn't, Wisteria is home to her now, because Wisteria is life instead. And I love so many conversations that we're having around that, around seeing the world, around living, existing. Conversations that Blythe has with Fate about the way in which some people will cling to the safety of what is known at the expense of never venturing out and doing more with their lives. And I really appreciated the conversations in here, but especially because I think in the first book we had so many discussions around death and how death comes for us all, and what death means, and what the afterlife might look like, and that there is beauty in death, and that dying makes life worth living, and all of those things. So then having the last book be so much about life and about what we do with the time we have, instead of fearing when it will come to an end, I think brought the whole series around in a really nice loop. And maybe the book's not that deep, maybe it's not trying to be that philosophical, but that was my takeaway, was that we slowly transitioned from talking about death and finality and the end of everything through to the fact that life is short is beautiful in its own right, and the connections and experiences that we have in life are what we will take with us. So yeah, I really loved this series. I had a great time with it. They're all 4-star reads. I'm just quickly nipping in to this vlog to interrupt it slightly, because I know that I mentioned throughout the vlog the possibility of reading Holly. Holly doesn't come out in paperback for the foreseeable future. I don't know when Holly is coming out in paperback. It might be out by the time this vlog is up, but bear in mind I am pre-filming this vlog by a lot. So because I don't know when Holly is coming out in paperback at the moment, I have decided I'm going to just do this vlog as the trilogy, just the 3 books, and then I will do a separate spoiler mini vlog, for want of a better word, for Holly, so that I can then finish up this series. So I've read the core trilogy in this one, not Holly. I hope that's okay. Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled program. So now quick chat on how this impacts my view of YA. Now, I don't know what order these vlogs are going to go up in. This is the one that's the wild card, because of Holly, because I don't know when Holly is coming out in paperback. So this is the only one where I am uncertain when this is going to feature, like when this vlog is going to actually appear. But it is the first one that I am reading. This is the first series that I'm reading for this project. So if others have gone up before this one, I will leave them linked and you can see my overall thoughts. I will leave that timestamped in the descriptions at the end of every video, where it's just an overall discussion around my thoughts on YA. As I said at the beginning of this vlog, YA for me has become quite an interesting space because I no longer seek out YA that I think is going to be quite thematically rich. Now, again, I already just discussed that the themes in this series are prevalent and they are good. I'm not saying that this book lacks themes, but books that are centered specifically on the discussion of a topic. So, for example, like Elatsoe by Darcy Little-Badger, which I read last year, they are books that I understand their place within the publishing industry, and I definitely think that teens should be reading. I do not read YA for anything other than a reprieve, than light relief, than entertainment, something that is addictive and compulsively readable, something that's easy for me to get through, which these types of books provide more. I'm not saying that they do not have substance. I am saying that the way that the themes are brought forth are done in a much more palatable and easy way, either because they're so overt or because they are just, it will not impact your enjoyment or not, whether or not you pick up on those themes. A big takeaway for me from this series is the themes, but it does not impact my enjoyment regardless. I could have enjoyed this series even if we weren't having discussions around life and death and how to live it and how to experience and what we should be taking with us when we go. Those are not things that impact my enjoyment either way. They're just things that I have picked up on that I appreciate, if that makes sense. So I think that I have a better understanding now of what it is I'm looking for in my YA. That will help me, because then that means that if there is a YA series that does sound appealing to me, I do not need to dismiss it on the basis that it's YA. I need to assess whether or not I think it's going to be the kind of book that will work for me within YA. Because with these books, with a YA book like this, where it is just easy and fun and compulsively readable to get through, those are the ones that I enjoy. The ones that have much denser themes or more intense themes, or that are trying to have a much more intense conversation within their stories, I always compare to adult more, which arguably would probably make them closer to adult books, right? But the problem with them being closer to adult books is that then I just sit there and think, I could be reading the adult version of this and probably would enjoy it more. And that's the problem, right? What we've learned, I think, from this is that I do have a better understanding of what I want from YA than I give myself credit for, and that it is okay for me that I am going to be able to pick up more YA books on the basis that I know what I enjoy now. One of the things that I've been wanting to do with these experiments is pick up books that sound interesting to me, series that I'm like, that sounds interesting to me, but I don't know if I will like it because it's YA. Now I do not need to disregard it on the basis of YA, just alter my expectations and see if, on the basis of the synopsis, if that synopsis sounds like something that I would compare to adult and would rather read an adult version of, or one where it doesn't matter if it's adult or YA. In the case of these romances, it doesn't matter if it's adult or YA. And that's the thing. With the heavier themed ones, they tend to be presented in a way that would be understandable to teens when it's YA. Ones like this, it doesn't matter if it's YA or adult. The only thing that would probably make the difference between this is that if this were adult, it would just have a couple more sex scenes. I don't think that in terms of if this were an adult or a YA book, if I were to look at it and think, yes, this is definitely adult or this is definitely YA, the only distinction would be the amount of sex scenes that are in them. We have mostly fade to black. We have the foreplay part and then fade to black. We don't have any descriptions of the actual sex scenes. So genuinely, the only threshold, because again, the characters are in their 20s. 19, I believe, in the first book, and they are in their 20s by this book. So to me, I don't think that, aside from if this had either more descriptive sex scenes on the sex scenes there are, or just increase the amount of sex scenes, I think that would be the only deciding factor as to whether this is YA or adult. Unlike with the more thematic ones, where the themes are clearly made more palatable, more understandable, and are therefore presented differently in YA as they are into adult. So now I have a better understanding of what I want from my YA. I am hoping that I will be able to continue to enjoy YA again, because it is something that is great for my brain when I'm feeling hormonal or when I'm just not feeling 100%. These that are super easy to get through, super compulsively readable, are fantastic, and that's what I use romance and romantasy for. I can just expand those horizons of romance and romantasy by including YA. Those are my thoughts on YA and how I'm feeling about YA and on this series, which again, 4-star series. I had a really fun time with it and I am glad that I read them. So hopefully I am enjoying or have enjoyed, I don't know, the rest of the YA series that I have on for this series of vlogs. So as I said, depending on how far into the series of vlogs I am, I will leave them linked and you can let me know what are some YA series that you think I will enjoy on this basis. That is all for this vlog. So I'm sorry about this ramble at the end here, but you know, trying to get my thoughts out a little bit on an entire age range marketing label is a bit complex. So thank you for sticking with me and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon.